Hello everybody. It's good to get back to the old way of doing it where I actually came on before the show and put the countdown up, and yeah, old school. You know how it is around here, things are always changing. Greetings, good morning, greetings and salutations and afternoons and evenings, whatever it might be, wherever you might be calling in from. Howdy, howdy. The live show will start right about then, so give or take a minute or 2 seconds. Kidding. We will be starting pretty much on time today. Go figure. Who's here in the chat room? Say hello. I see there's a good sized live audience today. And yet hardly anybody saying anything in the chat. Say hello, say good morning, say good evening. And let's get this party started in just a moment here. Hope you all are having a great day. Hope you had a great week and weekend. What is this, Monday? It is Monday. We had lovely weather here. And I got to barbecue last night, which is always the sign of a good weekend. So, let's see here. Why am I suddenly feeling like there's something wrong with the chat? I'm going to add a few seconds here while I figure out what's going on in the chat, because is the chat working? Am I actually live? It says I'm live. Okay, that's just weird. That says live. This is, okay, good. The chat's working. Do you see me? Do you see and hear me? Because there are some weird things going on over here. That is just here. We're gonna add a little bit extra time on there. Well, we figure, yep, everybody's seeing me. Okay, good. Whew. It's weird because I have my countdown over here, or not countdown, but my control panel from YouTube, and it's showing me that the show is going to be starting in 2 minutes, even though I'm 3 minutes past the start time. So I just wanted to make sure we're all good. Everybody sees me, everybody hears me, we're good. Excellent. Let's do this thing, shall we? Hit the big old record button, and let's get rid of this. Get rid of this, and let us begin. Oh, I'm going to wait for my interface to come back online. That just decided, oh good, it's back. I swear to God. Hey, does anybody know anybody at, before I start, real question here, at, what is this company called? Oh, I quit the browser. My Behringer is off for service, and it is at a company called Music Tribe. And they've had it for over a month. It was supposed to be fixed in like 5 to 10 business days or something like that. I can't get any info. Does anybody know anybody there? Make a call, say, hey, PhotoJoseph would really like his audio mixer back, because I can't monitor right now. I'm like flying blind. It sucks. I really need that back. So if anybody knows anybody there at Music Tribe, please, by all means, tell them to give me a call. That would be really, really handy. Okay, thanks. All right, let's get this started, shall we? Good afternoon and welcome to PhotoJoseph's Photo Moment. I'm your host, PhotoJoseph, and I'm going to be taking you today on a tour through the differences of the LUMIX G Series and the brand new LUMIX S Series. This is a live show for those of you watching live. Please get your questions ready. We'll be doing a Q&A at the end for those of you not watching live. Well, come on in, watch live sometime, and get to participate in the chat. This is a presentation that I just did last week at WPPI. I know I saw a few of you out there. Thanks for stopping by. And I added a couple things to it, so if you did see it there by chance, you'll see a little bit more in here. And also I dropped off a little bit of stuff from the end that was not really relevant to the audience here. But let's just get this thing started, shall we? We're doing it keynote style, like so. It probably helps if I hit play on here. There we go. And we start off with a lovely blank screen. Here's the contender. So we are again talking about the G Series versus the S Series. So that includes the GH5, GH5S, G9, S1, and S1R. First thing I'm going to do is put them on a scale of where they fall in the photo versus video realm. Is this more for photography, more for video, or somewhere in the middle? And unsurprising to most of you, I'm sure the GH5 will land right smack dab in the middle. It's a camera that is designed equally for people doing video and for doing stills. And having used this camera since day one, I can certainly attest that it does both very equally well. I love using it for both things. Wow, we're good today. The GH5S, absolutely much more a video camera. It does do still photography, but the big reason you wouldn't use it for still photography is the resolution of the sensor. It's only a little bit over 10 megapixel sensor for stills. It is primarily a 4K video sensor on there, so unlikely you're going to use it for still photography. And then you got the G9, which swings the other direction towards still photography. Now, it's not all the way to the left for stills because it does have some very, very good video features in it, but it is primarily designed as a still photographer's camera. So I'd say the still photographer who wants to shoot some video as well. We've done lots of comparisons between all of these cameras. If you search around on my channel or scroll down below, I'll link to all of those so you can see those specific comparisons if you're looking for those. Then we move on, it looks like I jumped ahead. We move on to the S1 and the S1R. So the S1 is a little bit more towards video than the G9 because it does have some higher end video capabilities than the G9 does, and the S1R is a little bit to the left because, for one, it does have a few fewer of the higher end video features, and it has a higher stills capability with that extra high resolution sensor. So that's a basic rundown of where those cameras fall. This isn't a hard line in the sand. This is just a basic rough rundown. You notice there's no numbers on here. It's just kind of an approximation. It feels somewhere around in here. All right, now let's talk about some of the obvious differences. The obvious differences between them, you undoubtedly know these already, but just to get these out of the way, make sure that we are clear. First off, the sensor, the elephant in the room. The Micro Four Thirds sensor is 1/4 of the size, the physical size of the full frame sensor. So you've got Micro Four Thirds on the G series, full frame on the S series. Literally double the width, double the height, 4 times the surface area. The size, the physical size of the cameras. Now, on the left, the G1, this is kind of an approximation of the 3 cameras because they're all a little bit different, but roughly speaking, about 5.5 by a little under 4 by about 3.5 inches versus a little under 6, about 4 1/3, a little less than 4 inches. So it doesn't seem like a huge difference. And it's not, but you put the two side by side and you can definitely feel the difference. There is a notable difference in size between them. Not just in size, but also in weight. So on the G series, ranging from 1.2 to 1.6 pounds. On the S series, 2.25 pounds. Now there's a pretty significant weight difference there. But keep in mind, this is without lenses. This is body only, both in size and weight. So by the time you add lenses on, which on full frame are bigger than their Micro Four Thirds equivalent, definitely adding some significant size and weight to the package in here. And then cost. The cost of the G series starts at $1,700 for the G9, goes up to $2,500 for the GH5S, whereas the LUMIX S series starts at $2,500 for the S1 and goes up to $3,700 for the S1R. So pretty significant differences. So again, these are the obvious differences, but they are the differences nonetheless. Now let's talk about the less obvious differences. On the G side, you have dual memory card slots that are dual SD cards. However, on the S series, while you still have dual card slots, one is SD and one is QXD/CF Express. That's future-proof compatibility for CF Express. That's a format that is coming soon. I think later this year is what the card manufacturers are saying, but that is yet again the next generation of memory cards. So you have both in there. You can look at that as an advantage or a disadvantage depending on where you're coming from, but good to know. The viewfinder itself. Now, if you've ever looked in the viewfinder of the GH5 or the G9, you know it's a pretty phenomenal electronic viewfinder. But if you haven't and you look at the look at the S1 or S1R, that viewfinder is incredible. So you're going from a 3.68 million dot resolution viewfinder, which is already amazing, up to a 5.76 million dot. It's a phenomenal viewfinder to look through. So it's one of those things that's pretty awesome once you put it up to your eye. The LCD, this is one of those big ones that people argue about. The G series has a fully articulating LCD, which means it flips all the way around, faces forward. The LUMIX S series has what's called a triaxial tilt. It tilts up, it tilts down, it tilts out a bit, but it does not do a full rotation, flipping around forward facing, meaning you can't really use it as a selfie cam, but then again, at that weight, you probably wouldn't want to. So it's a very important thing to consider, but there are those differences in the LCDs. Lens selection. On the G series side, that's the Micro Four Thirds side, you've got a ton of lenses to choose from. Not only all of the Panasonic LUMIX lenses, also all of the Olympus Micro Four Thirds lenses, plus a bunch of third parties that are making Micro Four Thirds and have been for years. You have dedicated cinema lenses, really, really nice high-end cinema lenses with Micro Four Thirds mount on them, and then you can adapt pretty much anything to Micro Four Thirds. Because of the smaller sensor, you can adapt anything from old vintage Russian lenses you pick up on eBay for 20 or 30 bucks. You can adapt those to Micro Four Thirds, up to really high-end full-frame cinema lenses that can then be brought down to size for Micro Four Thirds. So that's something that you can do as well. Pretty spectacular. Now on the S side, which is the L series lenses, there's no slouch, but we are a little bit behind. So with the Panasonic lenses themselves, there's 3 that are released at shipping. There are, a total of 10 that are committed by 2020. Sigma just announced at WPPI last week that they are doing 11 lenses. They announced their full lineup of the 11 lenses that they're doing, so that's coming pretty soon. Leica does have a series, I think it's 13, 13 lenses from Leica. They're incredible, but they're pretty spendy, so unless you're really prepared to spend Leica money, you're probably not going to be jumping into those. That's the extent of what is available or announced available that are dedicated L series lenses. However, just like with the Micro Four Thirds side, you can adapt. And there are already adapters out there for full frame Canon and Nikon lenses, as well as a really cool adapter that I saw a couple weeks ago that is effectively a speed booster to bring a medium format size lens, so a much larger lens, down into the full frame L series, L mount size. So that's pretty exciting. So there are other lenses out there, other options out there, but your options certainly are more limited on the S series size than they are on the G series side. Okay, now let's get into specifics. We're going to compare photography features to video features. For the photo side, we are primarily talking about the G9 here. And on the S side, it's going to be either S1 or S1R, and I'll call out the differences as we go. Resolution. On the Micro Four Thirds, your max resolution is 20.3 megapixels. On the S1, you have a 24.2 megapixel sensor. On the S1R, that's the high resolution one, you have a whopping 47.3 megapixel sensor. That's big. That is actually the highest resolution mirrorless camera in the world today. Not too shabby. High resolution mode. The G9 has a high res mode where it stitches together a series of photos. It does a little pixel shifting thing. I've done a whole show on that before. Just search G9 high res photo and you'll find the technology behind it and learn all about how that works. That is available on the G9. That gives you an 80 megapixel file. On the S, you have the same technology, but you can do a 96 megapixel with the S1 and a 187 megapixel with the S1R. That's kind of a big file. And just because it's fun, I put down the numbers: 16,736 pixels by 11,168. It's kind of a lot. That's a lot going on there. So you have that capability. Plus, in the S series, there is a new pixel shift technology that allows you to accommodate for motion in the scene, which is kind of awesome too. All right, aspect ratio. Totally not obvious unless you really are used to shooting both formats, but the Micro Four Thirds format is a 4:3 aspect ratio. The full frame format, which is based off of the old 35mm film format and aspect ratio, is a 3:2 aspect ratio. Funny story, when I first picked up an S series camera, was digging through the menus, I came across the menu, the aspect ratio choice, like you have in the cameras today. And it was set to 3:2. And I thought, well, that's weird. Someone changed it, and I put it back to 4:3. And then I realized, oh, wait, I'm now cropping. No, 3:2 is native here. So if you're coming from Micro Four Thirds, it is definitely a difference. It's kind of funny. Frames per second. So remember, we're talking still photography here. On the G9, you can do a maximum of 60 FPS when you're in autofocus single or manual focus, and 20 FPS with autofocus continuous. On the S series size, a lot more data to process. It does slow down considerably. 9 frames per second with autofocus single, and 6 frames per second with continuous. And for anyone thinking, why would I need 60 frames per second for autofocus single if it's moving and I'm not following focus? What's the point? Think about something that's moving in your plane of focus. For example, a dancer, a ballerina is a great example. They are maintaining distance from you, they're doing a move, and you can shoot 60 raw files per second to capture that movement with the G9. Pretty spectacular. And then the ISO. So on the G9, it maxes out at 25,600, whereas the S1 maxes out at 204,800 ISO. Pretty significant difference. And the S1R maxes at 51,200. So given the combination of both the higher ISO and the larger sensor, which is always going to be a better low light gathering sensor regardless, that's just physics, you are talking about a notably better low light performer in the S series than the G. Not to say the G series is any slouch. We've seen some fantastic low light performance on the G9, and for video side, fantastic low light performance with the GH5S, but in general, your S series is going to be a bit on the better side. Video. A lot of you guys are going to be interested in this one. Okay, so now we're comparing the GH5 and GH5S to the LUMIX S1 specifically. So these specs are specific to the S1. The S1R on the higher end side is usually a little bit lower, and I'll call out some of them as we go here. Native ISO on the GH5S specifically, not the GH5, but the GH5S does have dual native ISO, 400 and 2500. If you've never used this before, it's pretty remarkable to see that you have native ISO 2500 that looks just as clean as ISO of 400. It's insane. That's pretty incredible. On the S side, you have a single native ISO. There's no dual native ISO thing happening there. 4K 30. So we're going to go through 4K 30, 60, and another setting in here. So 4K 30 max on the GH5 and GH5S, you got a 400 megabit, 422, 10-bit all intro recording. That is your best you can do internally. On the S1 at launch, it's 100 megabit 420 8-bit long GOP. However, there is an update coming that will bring it up to 422 10-bit. So that is coming. Don't have a bit rate on that, but we know that that update will be coming in the future. 4K 60, they're the same. 150 megabit 420 8-bit internally on both. On HLG, if you're shooting hybrid log gamma, which I know not too many people are, on the S side, you've got the 72 megabit 420 10-bit. On the G side, and this might be specific to the GH5S, I don't exactly remember right here offhand, but it's a 200 megabit, and this is specifically in anamorphic mode. So if you're shooting anamorphic, which again is something I don't even have listed here, but you can do anamorphic on the G series, you can't do that on the S, you get a 200 megabit recording. Pretty remarkable in HEVC, which is already an extremely efficient format. Recording limits. On the S series, all recording limits are erased. There are none. It's all unlimited recording. You're only limited by memory card and battery power. And since you can have dual memory slots, you can swap them out. It can carry over from one to the other, and you can power it with external power. You can literally shoot indefinitely. On the S1 side, you have a 2959 limit on 4K 60, and you do have unlimited on 4K 30 and below. So something else to consider there. Other video differences. Vlog. It is on the GH5 and GH5S. It is coming to the S1. Not available on the S1R at all. So Vlog is coming to the S1 some point in the near-ish future. I don't believe there's a date announced for that. A VFR, or slow motion, variable frame rate. On the GH5 and GH5S, you have complete and total control. On the GH5S, you get up to 240 frames per second. On the GH5, it's 180 frames per second. You can shoot, and that's in 1080p, and you can shoot 60p and 4K, and that actually applies to both. The S1, you do have 180 frames per second, 1080p, so that's pretty awesome. But the big difference is the amount of control you have. On the G series, you have complete manual control, GH5 and GH5S. You have complete manual control over your VFR rates, your exposure and everything else that goes into it. On the S series, which is actually just like the G9, you're shooting essentially in a semi-automatic mode. You really don't have much control over it. Oh, there you go. Region. One of the surprising things that you may not think is important until you start traveling a bit. The G series cameras, the GH5 and GH5S, not the G9, GH5 and GH5S, are multi-region, meaning every camera that ships is PAL and NTSC and true cinema 24.00 hertz. On the S series, same as the G9 actually, it is limited to either PAL or NTSC. You purchase one based off of the region you live in, and that's what you have. And that may not seem like a big deal until you are shooting under artificial lighting in a foreign country, and you have to battle flickering, light flickering, you have to line it up with your frame rate and so on. It's a lot harder to do when you're mixing your format. Not impossible, but harder. However, slow motion, it is impossible. If you're shooting slow motion video on, say, an NTSC camera in a PAL region under artificial lights on the S series camera or the G9, you're never going to get them lined up. You're never going to get rid of the flicker. On the G series, you have enough control that you can get rid of the flicker, or you can simply switch the native format. So important things to consider there. Waveform monitor, little thing, but you have a waveform monitor on the back of the GH5 and GH5S that does not exist on the S series cameras. And finally, HDMI output. The GH5 and GH5S both have 422 4K 60 10-bit out. At launch, the S1 will only have 420 4K 60 8-bit, but it will be gaining 422 4K 60 10-bit. So that is coming. It's just not there to start. And that is everything on this list. Whew. That's a lot of stuff. So I'm going to launch into a Q&A right now. If you have any questions about what you just saw, any clarifications, let's hope I get everything right in there, by all means, get them up on the board. We will answer them right now. Wow. So now I'm back. Boom. The penny drops because I caught up to that. Remember before the show started when I said, does anybody know anybody at Music Tribe who can help me get my mixer back? Here's one of the challenges. Without my mixer, I have to manually re-enable my audio every time I switch back to here from my intro. And I lost it. I lost the whole thing. So, I wonder how many, yes, David, I will start over on the Q&A. It's remarkable this many of you stuck around because, wow, I'm sorry, guys. Sure, what the heck? Let's just see actually what is going on here. Yeah, David, I will start over. I'll start over. Hit that button again. No, texture. It's not about hitting the button. It's about when I do the opening, this. Then I have to manually re-enable my sound afterwards because I don't have my switcher. So, let's do it again. Jeez. All right. I wonder if I'll be able to cut that piece out of the middle of the live broadcast. Alrighty. Let's go back to the beginning, shall we? You can hear me now. We can hear me now. Everybody can hear me now. Let's hear me now. Oh, boy. Okay. With all that talking, now I definitely... I'll bet somebody texted me. Yep. Somebody texted me. Jake, thank you, brother. But everything's on silent. Everything is on Do Not Disturb so that I don't get disturbed. Clearly, I am disturbed. There's no undisturbing. All right. Anything else? Let me go back to the end again. Loud and clear. All right, we're good. Let's do this thing. Let's start over. Shark, what a great question. I haven't seen this question before. Shark says, I feel the GH5 is way better than the GH5S because of IBIS, for video, obviously. So, total up to you and your use case. The GH5S is better for video in the sense that it has better low light performance. The GH5 is better for video in the sense that it has IBIS. That's the internal stabilization, folks, in case you're wondering. It really comes down to what you need, and the only proper solution is to own both. Please use my affiliate links below. Hey, no, seriously, if you want the best of both worlds, then you got to have both cameras. That's just the way that it is right now. Who knows what the future could be from any manufacturer anywhere around the world, but right now, the best solution for low light on the G series is the GH5S. The best solution for all-around general use, handheld, is going to be the GH5 on the G series. Remember that the GH5S you can put onto a gimbal still and get even better stabilization, right? So that is an option as well. So keep that in mind. Randy said, in what ways is the GH5S better than the S1 for video? I'm going to say the dual ISO flexibility is awesome. I'm going to say the things like the waveform monitor on there, the higher bitrate recording and so on is better. But then you've got the larger sensor size, shallower depth of field, and all the things that come with that. So, tough call. I know that one of the next questions, here it is, John Morby says, hand on heart, in low light, would you rather have the GH5S or the S1? So, it very much depends on the situation. If I'm going to have to be hand-holding, carrying this camera around, I really don't want to hand-hold an S1, especially on a gimbal for any period of time for video. It's heavy. I don't want to do it. I'm going to love shooting with the GH5S. If I need to go handheld, GH5 or GH5S, I can put it onto a gimbal to get that really good, smooth performance, which, remember, a gimbal is going to be better than any IBIS. So there's that. If, however, it's a lock shot, studio environment, or whatever, I'm not moving the camera around, it's on a tripod, well, then obviously I want the best thing possible. So sure, why not? If I've got my choice and I got a bag full of S1s, then I'm going to go for the S1. But if I got to carry that thing and move it around, I'm probably not going to go for the S1. It's a big, heavy camera that I don't really want to be doing this. It's a very different experience, right? If you're shooting stills, you have a heavy camera, put it down around your shoulder, you pick it up, you're here, you shoot, you bring it down. But if you're doing video and you're holding it out, especially on a gimbal with a mic and all the other stuff on it, that's going to get heavy after a while. So it's important things to consider, very important to consider. Trevor, with contributions from Leica and Sigma, there's going to be really high quality glass available for the L mount. Yes, there is, but will they be affordable? Not from Leica. Leica lenses are super expensive. They're incredible. They're amazing. I've looked through some of them and you're like, what the what? They're really awesome. But look at the 50 f1.4. That is, we talked about it last week. It is designed to be what Panasonic is calling a reference lens. It is the lens to which all other lenses will be judged. It is meant to be the best in class, best it can be. It's not about weight. It's not about size. Who cares? Let's just make the best thing we can possibly make. And that is what that 50 f1.4 is. And it's remarkable. And I can't wait for that to hit everybody's hands and for them to start doing proper reviews and comparisons on it, because it's a remarkable lens, but also not cheap. However, there are already lenses on the market. Jake on the show here was texting me over the weekend and told me that pointed out that there is a lens on B&H that is an L mount. I don't remember the manufacturer now, but it's an L mount 50 f1.4. It's only $400. It's all manual, but things like that do exist, plus the ability to adapt and so on. Cost of lenses should not be a primary concern with the S series. I would be more concerned with size and weight. That would be one of the things to consider. Cost generally will be a bit higher, but that you should be able to work around it for the most part. Shahan, do you know whether the high-res modes of the S camera will be added to the G9 via firmware update? I do not. And did I get the question before that? I did. Okay. And Jake says, do you know if the video firmware update on the S1 coming out is going to enable waveform monitor? I have not heard that it would. I would not expect it to. Randy Robinson, for wedding videos, would you recommend the GH5S or S1? Okay, that's a great question. So that's part of what I left off of this presentation that I talked about at WPPI. WPPI, by the way, if you don't know, it's a wedding show. It's Wedding and Portrait Photographers International. That's the show. So my presentation was tailored more towards that wedding and portrait market. And if you are a dedicated wedding shooter, then low light performance for still photography and the shallower depth of field that you're going to get off the full frame is probably going to make most people lean towards the S series. Now, that said, it doesn't mean that wedding photographers who are shooting Micro Four Thirds should get rid of it, or that they never should have shot there in the first place. The reasons for shooting Micro Four Thirds are all still there. Smaller, lighter weight, more nimble, quieter, well, I guess not quieter than the mirrorless S1, but at least in DSLR it is. But just easier to move around, easier to deal with everything when it's smaller and lighter. Still pretty important. But as a wedding photographer, you also probably have the ability to, even if you're carrying around a heavy bag, set it down occasionally. If you're doing portraits, you set your bag down. It's not on your shoulder all the time. Whereas say a traveling photographer, it's always on you. Weight really, really matters in there. If I was going to sit down with a wedding photographer today who had unlimited budgets, deciding what cameras to buy, I would probably say the S is going to be the way to go. You're going to get that creamier bokeh. You're going to get the advantages of full frame. And you said specifically video, didn't you? You did say specifically video. So, ooh. Okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about video, because that's going to be pretty much all handheld. I would probably go with the GH5S on a gimbal. That would be my choice. I think so. I think so. Okay. John Morby, where did the sound go? Well, look at that. Now we got to the part where I have no sound. He has to scroll down soon. Hilarious. Happened the other day. See, look at this. All these people, mic check. Audio's almost now gone. Everybody scream. Jeez, I wish that there was a way. It's like, oh, something. Anyway, and but Bose Beaver was lip reading the whole time, so that's awesome. Thank you. Finally. Oh, good. Here we go. Here's another question. Whew. Wait, where'd it go? There it is. Tony G. I have a G9 with several of the PL lenses, 8-18, PL meaning Panasonic, I see. 8-18, 12-60, 15. Awesome. Going to Italy in the fall. Awesome. Would I be better off with the S1 and the kit 24-105 or the G9 with the above lenses? If I was going to be going to Italy traveling around, I would carry the Micro Four Thirds and those lenses. I would. Lighter weight. You're going to enjoy carrying all of that gear around a lot more. You have more options with that spread. The 15, so like with that spread, so you get 8-18, 12-60. So now you're covering your broad range. And the 8-18, unless you shoot a lot of wide angle stuff or you're vlogging, then you may not even need that 8-18. That's very much a personal thing. The 15 will give you the option to have that really small, lightweight lens for just, say, going out for dinner at night. You don't want to have to carry all the big gear. If you're carrying the S1 and the 24-105, you are carrying a camera this big everywhere you go. So for me personally, I would take my G9 and a couple of lenses. For a trip, traveling, that would be my choice. Jake Uptill. Oh, thanks. Jake Uptill saying the cheap L-mount lens was the 7 Artisans 55 f1.4. So I missed. It wasn't a 50. It was a 55-1.4. So for anybody who wants to check out what there is already available for cheap lenses, take a look at that, and I will eventually link to that down below as well. Shark, love full frame of the S1 S1R. EVR looks amazing. Yes, it does. But seriously going to break my bank? Yes, it will. I'll stick with my GH5 for my budget. But pro like yourself, the S1R is perfect for yours truly. For you truly. So for me. Okay, well, obviously I have an advantage where as being an ambassador, I am likely to, if not full-time, at least have an S series camera part-time. I will use that in the studio, for sure, because why not, right? I've got I have the bigger sensor. It's not about low light, maybe a little bit about bokeh, but even there, I'm often, for portraits, I'm often stopping down a little bit because I don't want too shallow depth of field. But, why not? I'm in the studio, may as well, right? Traveling, definitely not. Traveling, definitely going with the G series. We talked about landscapes at one point. Like if you're going to go do some epic landscape, then sure, it'd be great to have that higher res sensor. That's great if you're driving there. If I got to hike up a mountain, I don't think I want to take an S series and a bunch of lenses. It's a lot of heavy weight. Is what it is. Now, of course, if I have a commissioned project to go out and shoot with the S series, well, then obviously that's what I'll take. But yeah, I'm mostly going to be shooting with the G. I really am. Let's see here. Bike-O-Matic says, Sigma 16mm f1.6, is it worth it for the GH5? I don't know. I've never shot with it. I'm sorry. If anybody else here can help Bike-O-Matic, recommending or not recommending the Sigma 16mm f1.6, please do. F1.4, he's clarifying. There you go. Please do. Shark, will you be doing a real-world test with a video comparison with the S1 and GH5? Sure, why not? When I got both, I will do all kinds of comparisons. Actually, I plan on doing a lot of comparisons between them because I know that this is now, it's a big question. It's going to be interesting because I have not done comparisons historically on this show because as an ambassador for Panasonic, I don't do comparisons to Sony or Nikon or Canon or anything else because obviously I'm biased and no matter what I said, you wouldn't believe me. So, can't do that. But for the S versus the G, both made by Panasonic, now I can do some comparisons. And it's going to be very, very interesting to do. I'm looking forward to doing that. I had that S camera for a very short amount of time, so I didn't do any comparisons. And it's not finished firmware. When I had it, it wasn't finished firmware, so there's no point. But we'll do comparisons for sure. All right. Anything else? Nothing else there. Let me see. Oop, there was one just popped up. Shahan, as a Panasonic ambassador, how much influence do you have on decisions which Panasonic make? How much feedback do they take from ambassadors? They listen to every single word we say. Whether they act on it or not is completely out of my control, but they listen to us, so there is that. Actually, I know for a fact a lot of things that I'm seeing in cameras that have been coming out over the last couple of years are influenced directly by the ambassadors and some even by myself. So that's kind of awesome to see. But, you know, you put 10 ambassadors, you put 10 people in a room, 10 photographers in a room, you're going to get 10 different opinions on everything. Clearly, the camera manufacturers can't do everything for everybody, so they find the balance, and you know, it's moving along nicely. The S Series, the menu system in the S Series, real nice. It's going to take some getting used to, but it's real nice. Gulchies, given the choice, if it were up to you, would a fictional GH6 be micro four thirds or full frame? Well, micro four thirds. I mean, simply by the name, GH is always going to be micro four thirds. We have the G Series and the S Series. That's a nice, clean line in the sand. G Series is micro four thirds. S Series is full frame. So there you go. The GH6, I mean, obviously micro four thirds. What would it have? Everything. It would have this miraculous capability to give me full frame performance and a micro four thirds sensor. That's what it would have. Boza Beaver, what do you think will be the next big thing in photography gear? It was the big sensor, now it looks like it's eye autofocus on mirrorless. So the eye autofocus is really cool. It's really interesting. And keeping in mind again that the firmware that we've seen is not finished, but the autofocus capability, the AI capability or AI intelligence, I suppose you should say, that's built into the cameras. And it's not just, incidentally, it's not like the cameras actually have AI in them. It's AI education, if that makes sense, that is programmed into the camera. The camera itself it's not a Tesla. It's not like constantly updating and learning. That would be really cool. But it is AI-based knowledge that's gone into it. How this crap works. But the eye autofocus is very, very good. It's very cool to see. And I'm obviously going to be very excited to see where it ends up once the cameras are fully shipping and we're at 1.0 firmware. We'll see. Shark, is there anything missing from the S Series that you would have liked from Panasonic? Any of my Panasonic people still watching? I, for one, and I think a lot of us have been very vocal about it, I miss the fully articulating LCD. That's probably the only thing on the S Series that I look at and go, oh, I wish it had that. But, and it's not for selfies. For me, it's about setting up in the studio. I do a lot of stuff where I'll set up a shot in the studio and, you know, I've got my camera on a tripod and I flip the LCD towards me and then I go over here and I set up what I'm doing and I'm looking back at the camera. And clearly I can set up an external monitor or do it through the app or whatever, but it's obviously just really easy to flip it around. So that's one thing that I do miss. That said, shooting with the triaxial tilt screen that just flips up, which is the same type of screen, actually it's more flexible then, but it's the same idea as the one that's on the GX85. The GX85 one only flips up and down. It doesn't tilt out at all. The S one also tilts out. I will say that was nice, having it not stick out to the side when I'm shooting down, because I like to shoot down quite a bit. That's a lot of how I hold my cameras, is I'm shooting down. I did like that, but I still would rather have the full articulating. Other than that, there isn't a thing on there that I'm like, no, I think it's a freaking crazy, awesome camera. Definitely, definitely. AI is a buzzword used too often. Well, it is AI buzzword, I don't know what to tell you. Machine learning, I could call it that. That'd be better. Everybody knows what AI is. It's all the same thing. Machine learning, big data. Trevor says, behind the scenes, given what Nikon is doing with Atomos, do you think other manufacturers are looking at ProRes RAW? Absolutely. Curious on your position here. Absolutely. Everybody's talking to them. There's no doubt about it. One of the challenges, as I understand it, this may not be 100% accurate, but as I understand it, the HDMI spec today, HDMI is capable of carrying ProRes RAW. The HDMI spec does not support it, which it's a standards thing, which means that, I guess means that there's a risk that something could change in the standard and break the functionality that manufacturers have built in. So like Nikon announcing that they're doing ProRes RAW over the HDMI, technically possible, but risky. And I think that once that is built into the spec, and I could be misrepresenting this. This is certainly not something I've dug a whole bunch into. This is my cursory understanding of it. But until that's built into the specs, or once it's built into the specs, then we're going to see a lot more cameras offering it. Clearly, the ability to do it is phenomenal. We talked about a RAW video a while ago here on the show after NAB last year when that was announced, and I had some footage that I was able to show you guys. It's incredible, right? Obviously, it'd be great. Heck, I'd love to have full RAW internal, whatever. Why have an external device? But that's where we're at today. But I would expect that is something we will see coming as more and more cameras evolve, and as the spec evolves as well. Let's see here. Shark, sorry for the non-Panasonic question, no problem. Are you planning to review the Atomos Shinobi and the small HD Focus 7? So Atomos did not reach out to me about that one. Actually, the last I heard from Atomos, they asked if I wanted to review the 5-inch one, and then that conversation dried up. I'm not quite sure what happened. I have another small monitor, where it is, that I need to review. I had one that I talked about a few times. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. So I had this one from a company called Portkeys. These guys reached out to me. So sorry, to answer your question, the 7, whatever it was, the no. The small HD monitor 7, no. Unless they call me and they want me to do one. But because I've been getting my channel's at a size now where smaller companies do reach out to me and say, hey, would you review our product? The bigger companies, not so much, but the smaller ones are, which is great, right? So I can share with you guys some alternatives that are often less expensive, things that you may not necessarily have known about. So like this Portkeys one was one of them. Very promising. It was supposed to have this thing called the long arm that would allow me to control my GH5 from this display at a distance. They sent me multiple parts for it. It never worked, so it never got reviewed. Unfortunate. It's a nice monitor, but without the whole control thing, then it's kind of like, what's the point? It's just a small monitor. There's another company that I have a monitor from who I haven't even opened yet, that is another small 5-inch monitor, very affordable. I want to say under $200, but don't quote me on that. And I'm excited to work with that. I might work with that on something I'm going to shoot tomorrow, if all plans go right. And then I'll be doing a review on that one. But it's the smaller, lesser known stuff that I tend to get more on this channel because, I'm not a huge channel. Plenty of other people doing the really big products, so I'm happy to be doing the smaller ones for now. It's kind of fun. Okay. And yeah, I know small HD makes great monitors, but yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Media Manaman, I can see you've got a question there that you intended for me to answer. Make sure you put out PhotoJoseph so I know it's a question for me, but I will hit it. For professional real estate photography, where autofocus, bokeh, and low light are not big deals, is there a difference in image quality between the G9 and the S1 that would justify a $6,000 investment? No. No, I do a bit of real estate photography. I don't promote it at all anymore, but occasionally I still get called for it. Real estate photographers, real estate agents need pictures that are 640 pixels wide. And they don't want bokeh, right? You want to be able to see everything. So, no. In fact, it's to your advantage to be working with a less than full frame camera. I know there are some agencies out there that hire photographers and they're like, you have to have a full frame camera. And you're going, why? You will never know that I could shoot this on my iPhone and you wouldn't know it. I would know. S Series for real estate, no. Unless you're doing, I said S Series, not Hey Siri. Shut up, phone. No, that's not the one I wanted. Oh, that's going to be a problem. Oh boy. Unless you're doing like really high-end real estate, Which even then, I just really can't imagine why. There's just no point. Maybe if you're shooting like multi-million-dollar homes and you're doing these massive composites and you're actually lighting the interior, who the hell wants to light the interior? But if you're doing that sort of thing, then sure, maybe full frame would be good. But honestly, no thanks. I would stick with Micro Four Thirds for that. Where'd it go? Eric Sauer says, what would you recommend? I want to buy my first camera. I'm interested in video and photo, but more video. Okay, is the S1 a better long-term investment, or do you recommend a G Series, and why? If it's your first camera, get a G Series. The S Series is going to be a very expensive first camera, my friend. Very, very expensive. Unless you've got all kinds of money to spend, in which case, hire me, and I'll teach you how to do anything you want. But the G Series is definitely where I'd start. And if you don't even know exactly what you want to do, buy used, man. Buy used is a great way to go. You can pick up a used, something like a G7, or heck, you probably get used GH5s these days for a pretty good price. You can get a great camera for very little money without having to go crazy on it. And if you find that it's the best thing in the world for you, build up, start investing bigger. But until you find a real reason to spend the kind of money that is required to get into the S Series, I wouldn't do it. I would stick with the G. That would be me. Shark, did you hear about vulnerability detected in Thunderbolt attacks? No. Thunderbolt allows unlimited memory access. It allows direct memory access attacks or simply DMA attacks to be carried about. I did not hear about that. That sounds not good, but how would someone get to my Thunderbolt port remotely? I'd have to understand that a little bit more. Sorry. Incidentally, for those who are following along my Mac Mini saga, so I got my Mac Mini back. They soldered on the fan controller. And a couple times last week when I was using it, the fan kicked in. Yeah, fine. But then it didn't turn off. Ever. I had to reboot it. And I called the company and they said, well, that's another repair. And they're being very good about it. If I send it in for that repair, they're going to credit the difference of what I already paid. But at this point, I will be at the same point of if I just bought the RAM from Apple. So if you're buying a Mac Mini, you may want to think very, very carefully about whether you want to install your own RAM. Man, what a mess. So I haven't decided if I'm going to do it yet. So far today, the fan hasn't kicked in. I downloaded a little fan controller, so I'm going to kind of keep an eye on that, keep an eye on temps and see what happens and see if so I can watch it. If it does kick on because of high temp, but then it doesn't turn off when the temp goes down, that's when I know there's going to be a problem. So I'm going to be watching that, but what a freaking nightmare. Okay. What else? Jake says, any thoughts on the autofocus speed in single point for S? Everyone on YouTube seems to bag on the DFD autofocus. Of course they do. But from what I've seen, it way outperforms Nikon Z's in single point autofocus. So here's what I've seen. Again, working with, what do you call it? Pre-release firmware, right? 0.7, I think it was. The autofocus seems to be better than the GH5. There were cases where it didn't want to grab focus, but that was specifically using the 50mm lens, which is on like 0.2 or 0.3 of firmware. So for that, all bets are off. That is all changing. The theory behind depth from defocusing is really interesting. And for still photography, it is a better system. It is faster. It is faster. And even though what you see through the viewfinder, you might see a little bit more hunting, the actual photo is sharp. It's a weird phenomenon, but it has to do with how it grabs focus. Video, obviously that's not ideal. And video is getting better and better. And I think long term, and I can't say that this is going to happen with the S series, at least the S1 and S1R, or where exactly this will happen. But as I understand it, again, I'm not an engineer, certainly not a scientist, have basic preliminary understanding of these things, a rudimentary understanding of these things. The main reason that Panasonic is sticking with DFD is because the expectation is that DFD can be superior with enough processing power. We're getting closer to that. It gets better all the time. There's going to be a tipping point. There's going to be a crossover point. Again, as I understand the theory, there's going to be a crossover point where DFD will be the better autofocusing system. We're not there yet for video, but we're getting there. The AI stuff is supposed to help that a lot. Eye detection is supposed to help that a lot. Tracking, there's a tracking feature that is so cool that, in retrospect, I wish I'd showed this to you when I had the camera last week. You've got body tracking on the G9. and now the S Series has it as well. Let's say you've got 3 people in frame, and you're going to see 3 boxes around them, or faces if they're close enough. But if they're back a ways, you're going to see 3 boxes around each person. In autofocus, in continuous autofocus, in photo or in video, you can tap on the screen on the individual that is your primary, your most important one, and that box will change colors. I think it goes from green to yellow. I don't remember. Anyway, it changes color to indicate that that is the highlighted one. And as that person moves around, as those 3 people move around the scene, it keeps track of the one that you called the primary. Way cool. So stuff like that is insanely awesome. And that's there's things like that that are going to eventually make this the superior system. Again, in theory, not a scientist. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, but there you go. So as far as the single point speed specifically, Jake, I don't think I did any testing in single point speed. I was always using face detection because that's what I really wanted to see how it worked. And it worked out great, but no, that's about all I can tell you. Shark, the good news is that the Intel releases Thunderbolt to the industry to become USB 4 at 4 gigabits. I just 40 gigabits. That's great. I hope they don't change the port because I'm getting used to USB-C now. Shark, great tip earlier regarding the first camera to buy. I got my GH5 in February for $1,100. Awesome. All my kit was 60% cheaper by buying it used. Absolutely. Saved a fortune, especially lenses. Buy used. Buy used when you're getting started. There's no reason not to. The camera that gets released today is better than the camera that was released last year. But you're a beginner. You're not going to notice the difference. You're going to be using this much of a percentage of the capabilities of that camera. Don't do it. And if you really are itching to spend money on lenses. It's so much more important to have good glass than it is to have the latest and greatest camera body. I've got lenses that I still use that I've been shooting with since I switched to Micro Four Thirds, what, 6 years ago now, something? In my old full frame kit, I had lenses that are like a decade old or more when I stopped shooting them. There is no reason to constantly buy the latest and greatest body. I would love that you do it. I would love if you use my link if you do. But when you're spending money, put your money into lenses. Buy used if you want to save a little bit of money. When it comes to buying lenses that are used, as long as they're not scratched, they're awesome. You know, you can save a lot of money that way. So there you go. Okay. Man, that was a bunch of stuff. That is everything. All right. We're going to knock it off there. Oh, that was already off the screen. We're going to knock it off there. That was a long show, especially made longer by the fact that I was totally silent for the first 10 minutes of the Q&A. Thanks for those of you who stuck around for the Q&A. Once it restarted again, that was very nice. I appreciate that. And yeah, other than that, we're out of here. Thursday show is going to be one where I'm going to go try and shoot and edit something tomorrow. We'll see what actually happens. So hopefully, fingers crossed that that does happen. Hey, with that, time to sign off. Thanks a bunch, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a thing or two. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.